Hey everybody, Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Groups. It's Tuesday, it's 10 o'clock. Mary and Rick have a special guest, and we've got two young men over here that are visitors to our show, so y'all take it away.
Good morning, Mary. How are
Good
you?
morning. They're trying to be shy about, well, at least Colton, he's
Yeah,
trying to be
they
shy.
aren't too shy. Now, Larry, we do have a special guest, and it's a special day for our special guest because Bob Whiteside, he's an Army veteran, Vietnam veteran. Today's his birthday.
Happy birthday.
So happy birthday.
I'd sing to you, but I sing really badly. Okay, good. Maybe at lunch when no one
Yeah.
can hear.
And Bob, he's got some incredible stories about his time in service. And he went in the Army kind of in the earlier 60s, didn't you? So was in Vietnam whenever they were starting to really build up. So Bob, tell us about, you're from Chicago, so you're sitting next to, you
Hey,
have a little
didn't know
reunion
that.
here. Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to
my
tell everybody, you know.
goodness. My sister will be on her way back there here pretty soon. She still lives in the city. She works at the Green Mill. And it's a bar. It's a 40s bar that Al Capone used to hang out at in the city. Yeah.
Well, as long as you brought up Chicago, I was raised about less than 1 mile away from Rick.
Is that right?
Then we went uptown, Jefferson's, to Park, which is part of the side. And one of my grandmother said to my mother, Louise, I want something better for the boys, so we're moving out of Chicago. So we moved to Deerfield, Illinois. It's there and a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. I was raised in the northwest suburbs. Hanover Park, Streamwood, Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates.
After my
Yeah.
divorce, I lived in Schaumburg.
Yeah, small world. How about that? I was there till I went in the Air Force. I was in that area. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
growing up
yes.
that close to Wrigley Field, did you go there sometime?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you could even hear the sound of people that were out there watching the game. And it was just like, wow. So my brother and I, who was 21 years younger than me, let's go over. We didn't get more than one block. My mother said, boys. I said, uh-oh.
Yeah, but back in the day when Wrigley didn't have lights, that's when, because they put those lights and I was like, you just spoiled the whole thing of Wrigley
Yeah.
Field. The magic of Wrigley
Because
Field. You're changing it.
Back then, they didn't play the World Series at night. All the games were played during the day. So a lot of people took off that week to watch the series because it was during the daytime.
You don't get too many. The Cubs don't get, you can't be a fair weather fan when you like the Cubs and the Bears. You just have to roll with it.
Kind of like the Cowboys, huh? Kind of like the
Lately,
Cowboys. Lately, only the last 20 years or so.
So anyway, getting back to you.
Okay.
So I graduated from Highland Park High School in 1962. And I went to college for 90 days. It wasn't because
You'll
of
move.
OCS or anything else. But I went ahead and went to Kansas Wesleyan University in Salina, Kansas. Because it's one of the few universities that accept me based upon my grade average. So
Because it was so good, right?
plus it was cheap. So anyway, after 90 days, I could see the writing. So I better go. And I kept on thinking about the Marines. I said, nice uniforms. They're always the first ones to go in. So I went into the Army, and recruiting sergeant, did the battery test and everything else. So he said, I want you to see what I'm going to make a phone call. He calls my dad. He says, Mr. Whiteside, your son is here for the last 2 minutes. So he said, what did you say? My son is here for the last 2 minutes. Why does he want to enlist? Well, you want to talk to him? No. If he wants to enlist, let him enlist. Just let him know. Say something. His ass is mine. And so, anyway, went through basic at Fort Leonard, Missouri. Went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, for radio teletype operator. And then from there, my first duty assignment was with the first CAD, Korea. And we were stationed about 7 miles south of DMZ. And at that time, in July of 1963, that's when the MPG got hit by the North Koreans. And so, as I was telling Rick the other day, that we reported in, it was in the evening, looked to the beach, no one's there, right? All of this background machine gun fire. Oh my God, they're coming for us. And all of a sudden, the screen door opens. I'm not ready for this. Here's my section chief.
Ah,
He said, "Oh, you're the new NFG guy, right?" And I, "Yeah, yes, I am." And I said, "What's all this noise?" And so he explained to me. He said, "We get night firing everywhere, every night, so everything go ahead and scare the North Koreans." And I said, "Does it do any good?" He said, "No, they still come across. They're getting it." And so I spent a year there, and while I was there, the out got transferred to back to the States and started airborne. And then the second infantry took over for the first camp. So when I left Korea, I got one of the sweetest duty assignments, I mean, better than U.S. Air Force.
no, say it isn't so.
I got transferred to Greece,
Oh, nice.
and I was stationed about 5 miles outside of Athens at a Greek Air Force base called LFC. And what our job was supposed to do is, you had the base on the lower level, but then you have a small mountain range back of the air base. And that's where we kept all the nuclear warheads of the Mediterranean area. And I mean, it was really sweet. If you ever have a chance to go on a cruise or whatever, it's just beautiful. And then after I left there, then I wanted to go to Japan. Fortunately, I went to and so, as a result, I was with the 15th Engineer Battalion. There, so the advanced program, the advanced program. The division didn't come over until December or January. So we got over there. I was telling Rick, I said, we were completely caught off guard. Well, after I tripped on the rope ladder, because they didn't teach us how to climb down rope ladders from a troop ship. Okay. And no, thank God I didn't go airborne because I wound up upside down. So
Oh, no.
Coming down the
I
rope
can
ladder.
imagine those things aren't, they aren't the easiest
No,
things to climb.
especially if you got a pack on. And so, anyway.
But I mean, you thought y'all were fixing to invade and hit the beach,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I got guys coming down screaming at me, and so finally a couple of Marine guys from the LST came up and pushed my butt up so I could get right sided up when I came down. So we get into the LST. And I said, okay, when are we going to hear the command lock and load? As we got closer to the beach, all of a sudden you hear this laughter, this music. What is going on? Well, come to find out, somehow, I'm going to say in-country R&R center.
They thought this was D-Day. You know, I mean, they were.
Yeah, well, if no one tells you, how would it, you gotta assume the worst, right?
Oh, you have to. You know, you hear all the words and this and
Yeah.
that. So anyway, we got processed, and we went to Bearcat, which was outside of Saigon. And actually, the First Infantry had been there. That's their base. Moved on to the Central Highlands or whatever. So our second week there, all of a sudden we hear a boom and black smoke just pillowing from this one area. Camping tree. they don't attack in the daytime. Now, yes, they do if they could. That's what they had done. 4 tunnels. 3 of the 4 tunnels had been shored up. The last one had not been shored up. If it hadn't been for this APC that came around the inside of the berm, they would have completed that because they had the tunnels from the mission headquarters, ammo dump, the lower school, and also to the medical. And, they could have come in at any time. Because, like I said, we would be next time.
And y'all didn't have any idea that you had all these tunnels right underneath your base.
No, remember, so in the training we had at the time at Fort Riley, Kansas, they talk about it, in a few words or less. And it never came across our minds that we would see it. So that's when I really had a lot of respect for seeing also the NBA. So anyway, our mission was to kind of redo it. And once that APC fell to the ground,
Oh, my.
and that's when they actually found the tunnels.
Oh, can you imagine?
So then, the intent was with Bearcat, majority of combat troops from the 9th be stationed at Bearcat because you have several provinces around in that general area, which have been heavily controlled by the PC over the years. And then we were supposed to go down to Delta and build a brand new base, known as Dawntown. And Vietnamese means
I forgot what you told me.
something to the effect of respectful minds and hearts. But roughly translated. And it was Westmoreland that picked the site. The only problem was you had to make Cone River going like this. And he said, we need 600 acres. So here you are, it's marshland. What are you supposed to do? Well, the engineers went ahead and they dredged as much sand as they could on the river to build a base. Just
To build everything up out of the marsh.
so anyway, we went ahead and did that, and then the rest of the division came in. And there's one picture which I have to laugh at. It's commanding general at that time. Now, he's in the front row, of troops right behind him. He's walking.
Like MacArthur.
And probably the only time he was walking on that beach was for that photo op, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we went ahead and it took a couple of years for it to be really developed. But the good thing was we hooked up with the Navy. Hit the ground running, which was a mobile revolution.
And I don't know if you've met Rex King. He comes to roll call. He was in the Brown Water
Right,
Navy, and
yeah.
he's one of the guests on our show, and talked about that. And you had some pictures that looked like where he might have been. But that area, whenever you went to Bearcat, that area, the Viet Cong had been there, and I mean, all the local people were kind of under their brainwashing. So you had to, I mean, you had the enemy right there.
The thing was that we were the first Anglo-Saxons to be there.
Wow.
So, try to imagine, here you have the Rice Basket, Vietnam, being controlled by the BC and the And I mean, I felt so sorry for the villagers because they had such fear of still. And all you have to do is go in, get the chief, cut off his head, hang him by his thumbs or whatever, and then the village will, okay, whatever you need. It took us over a year just to make a slight
Wow.
into the villages. And during that time, from late 66 to mid 67, something like that, we lost about 25%. those casualties.
Did you say about 4,000?
So,
And that's, I mean,
That's a pretty
that's
high,
like
yeah, that's a lot of people.
a little less than
About 1,000
yeah,
people.
yeah.
you know, a lot of it was due to trench this or that. I mean, and as far as the people that were killed, the KIAs were somewhat not that drastic as what the others that were. So anyway, the division commander at that time, we went through 3 division commanders. But they went ahead and decided, okay, what we need to do is for the replacements coming in, we need to set up an academy. And a youth academy for all the replacements. And basically they learned about what you're supposed to do in the field, what snakes there are, what things there are, things like that. And then, toward the end of the week, they had the proud privilege of going for 20 hours.
Wow,
And they
20 hours.
And they took them into areas that they knew the DC.
Baptism by fire.
Yeah, well, but you know, that makes me think about the situation like Don had, where, you know, talked about the young man who jumped in the foxhole, the replacement, and how often you hear in the different wars that replacements got taken out almost as quickly as they got there because they didn't have that knowledge and that understanding, and so they were probably a little more vulnerable. And maybe that's why replacements got taken, because Don says, you know, a lot of times it was replacements. It wasn't the guys been there the whole time. It was the replacements that were coming in that were the ones that were getting taken
And,
out.
you know, the one thing about that is that the replacement has to prove himself to the rest of the people in the squad or
To build that trust and
so they would do six.
Yeah.
And, you know, here you got young kids coming in. And really, toward the end of the war, it got to the point we were short of officers. So what they were doing was young people out of high school, 1 year college, go to OCS, become second lieutenants, who had no idea what to expect.
Right.
So, and that was just the
Yeah.
the base for us.
Yeah, you hear a lot about that in
getting fragged and
well, but if you really listen to the stories of the Vietnam veterans who talk about, those were the people that were, you know, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to lead us into death for sure. So we can't have this young lieutenant who doesn't know what the heck he's doing leading us all, you know. You got the crotchety old, you know, master sergeant over here knows what's going on. And this young punk lieutenant's going to tell him how to keep all these men safe. They weren't having it. Yeah, yeah, and that's a lot of the history that I found very fascinating.
Well, and the same thing fell true during the Second World War.
Yeah, yeah.
In the same situation. And you just have to earn their respect. That's all it is to it. And, you know, every person's going to be different, especially if they've never been in a fight situation outside the service, or they might have been tied into a gang or something like that. But anyway, so my job as a radio teletype was to sit in a 3/4-ton truck. All this communication equipment, and just enough room for one person to be. And I had to monitor so many different frequencies. And some of the times that I listened to some of the frequencies, in fact, I was telling Rick that there was an ambush patrol set up. Well, Chuck was right for the ambush patrol. Killed our guys, and also some dead stars. All of a sudden, we had to do stuff. And so the next morning, this happened about like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock, humans were going out to this location. Dismember was over there. And it was a shocker to hear, because we had the aviation battalion almost right across the street from us. And to listen to some of the stories that they took,
Yeah, because I mean, they did horrible stuff to him.
Yeah, yeah. But I can't imagine you that, the PTSD that probably brought on, right? For you to have to remember those things as you go on in life. But also you're in this, what, I'm sure they were aiming for that thing. They want to take out communications. They're aiming for you. How does
Well,
that
you know,
feel?
worse yet is when you're in the field and you got to put 10 on your back, and all they do is spin the antenna, moving back and forth.
And knock out the communications.
Yeah.
That's right. Get rid of him.
I mean, if they're gonna be successful, the first thing they gotta go after is communications. That's you.
You know, so it was like, I mean, there was so much stuff that went on. Then there was another time, one of the armored calves, they got attacked from the village, and the squadron commander said, "We're going to go back to the village to see lost some people." And we did. Unfortunately, Westmoreland transferred, took the command away from the man on the desk. So, but I mean, when we heard that, the story just kind of continued. So, anyway, it, you know, everything I heard on the radio and so forth, yeah, it has me. But the one thing that happened for us, there was three of us that had joined up together. We were like three people. And one of the guys, his right sister was in a hill accident. Great. So he got a compassionate transfer back to the States. The picture of Butch with her hands, he was my best friend. I mean, he and I knew exactly how to think apart this and that. I mean, we got in trouble so many times. He got promoted, I got demoted. How does this work? Yeah. You did the same thing as I did. Yeah, but you were late one time. And so anyway, we had flipped the point to see who was going to be working. And I wanted, I said, have at it, Butch. So he went ahead. He took it. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And threw the back was head off. So I, right away, you get that queasy feel. Line numbers come in sure than any. And we only had like 6-month extension. So I went over to the Red Cross and I said, "Oh, Mr. Whiteside," I said, "No, Mr. Call me Private Whiteside." It's not a specialist anymore. So anyway, he said, "We got a telegram in from the Pentagon." I said, "Yeah, it was from Mr. Owens' father." Really? Come to find out, it was an E8 personnel. And Butch had talked so much about it that his father said, "I don't think that's what my son's body did."
Oh, wow.
So I said, "I'll do it." You know, I wanted to actually, like that, I was bad. So, but anyway, escorted his body back to Oakland, to Travis Air Force Base, and they lost his body.
Oh, how on earth?
So we don't know how it happened, but either the tag came off, or frustration. We had situations where they have lost other bodies just because there was no identification. And so anyway, I called up his dad. He said, "I'm going to put orders for you. You go home, stay there, but checking with official headquarters at sure. And keep in touch so they know what's happening. Once I find out something, if I find out you, I'll let you know, put you fresh orders so you can go ahead and get the body." So anyway, he called me up. He said, "We found the body." I said, "Fine." He said, "Go to O'Hare Airport, hop a plane, and the body's coming in through O'Hare, and then escorted all the way back." So escorted him back. his parents asked me to go ahead. Be part of the funeral service. And so, you know, it's more than a favor. So he's buried just probably 100 yards away from Kennedy's flame at Arlington National. So anyway, went over to their house after the internment, and his dad said, "I want to see you for a minute." And I said, "What's this all about? Am I going to get a promotion?" So I'm going to go work in the Pentagon? Yeah. So he said, "I want you to have this." It was his trust blues that he had. He said, "This was going to be for Butch." He said, "But I want you to have it." And I said, "I can't accept that." I said, "Leave it with his wife," because he had just gotten married before he came back for a 6-month extension, and she had a baby. And I said, "It really belongs to them." "Well, she doesn't want to have it." And I could understand why.
Right.
So I said, "Okay, I'll take it." So went home, and then I went ahead, and I had 18 months left on my enlistment, so I wound up at Fort Carson, Colorado. So I went from a radio teletype operator to a supply sergeant. And I remember that when I first walked into the company, I was with the headquarters company, 2nd Battalion, 84th Artillery. The first sergeant, big dude, I mean, he was like a sumo wrestler. And he opens up my jacket, he said, "Well, Whiteside, you're one hell of a blah, blah, blah." And I, "Yes, Top, I sure was." And he said, "That's it. I'm glad you said it was." And I said, "It's all in the past." He said, "I got my eye on you."
Gotta watch those first sergeants.
So anyway, he said, "Now I want to introduce you to your company commander. His name is Captain Sauer." And he gave me a brief history. He said he graduated from the University of Minnesota. He was pro hockey, semi-pro, excuse me. And so I went in, nicest guy in the world. And he never instilled the fear in me. All I knew was the first sergeant did.
Good
So-
cop, bad cop.
So, anyway, long story short, during that time, I went from an E3 up to an E5 because I had been one of the top people whenever we had guard duty that I was always selected, just because, you know, you knew this, you knew that, and everything else. And so I would wind up as a CQ runner for a battalion, which I was entitling to a 3-day pass. So it got to the point they said, "We can't put this guy in guard duty anymore. It's not fair to the rest of the guys." So they said, "Let's keep him in supply. Let's promote him to supply sergeant," because the current supply sergeant was going to go ahead and retire anyway. So toward the end of my enlistment, they said, "We want you to consider something." I said, "What's that?" "If you re-enlist, we'll make you E6. And then we want you to consider going to ECS." I said, "Oh, my dreams are coming true." So I went home, told my wife, she said, "Dear, I'll tell you what. If you do this, we're divorced. If you don't do it, then we can go back home. And we'll have our son, blah, blah, blah." Okay, guess I'll turn it down. If I had known 7 years later it's going to be divorce, I would have stayed in. No ifs, ands,
Yeah,
or buts about
isn't
it.
that the way it happens? I had a similar story.
So anyway,
Yeah.
they when I got discharged, my first job I had was with the post office. That didn't last more than a year. Anyway, that's a different story. That probably gave me PTSD also. But anyway, they went ahead and I couldn't get along with any of the people in there just because of the politics. I mean, a small post office. So I was going to junior college anyway, and then I wound up being a pricing specialist for General Telephone Electronics in one of the suburbs of Chicago. And then from there, I went ahead and I became a purchasing manager for a construction company called Riverside Corporation. And then I went ahead and got hooked into Ellis Chalmers, who eventually was bought out by Fiat. So on the construction side, it became known as Fiat Ellis. So they started me off as an expediter, and then I was a junior buyer, then a buyer, and then a senior buyer, then an international buyer, which allowed me to go over to Europe and talk to potential customers. So I left there, and then I went ahead and my father-in-law was a marketing manager at United States Gypsum Company. Well, now, let me back up a little bit. That I was getting tired of being in purchasing, and one of the sales managers from another company called Lincoln St. Louis came in and talked to me and said, would you be willing to interview for a sales job? Yeah, is it outside or inside? He said, well, this will be outside. And he said, well, I'll call you. So we had the interview over the phone a couple of days later. So he made a job offer me, and I stayed 5 years with him. And then I said, you know, I want something more challenging. So my father-in-law, like I said, was marketing manager for our division. And so he said, we have 3 or 4 different openings. Do you want to move to Texas? Do you want to go to the East Coast? Do you want to go to the West Coast? Or do you want to stay in the Chicago area? Well, it's too damn expensive in the Chicago area.
And cold, and snow, and ice. Yes.
Ah, you miss it.
No, I don't miss it at all.
And so, and California was way too expensive.
Oh, yeah.
East Coast, I did not like the East Coast because when I was a buyer for Fiat, I was in New York City, and I'll tell you, you know, there's rude and there's crude. Okay, and they were both. So I just said, no, I don't want the East Coast. I said, I want to go to Texas because we had friends that lived down in Grand Prairie. And this goes back to 85. So we've been here since 85.
Been here a long time.
Yeah.
I want to kind of step back a little bit to Vietnam, because you had to go out in the field as a radio operator on some of those missions, and that was down in the Delta, so it was kind of wet, wasn't it? I mean, because I can't imagine being out there all day long, walking around in all that water and then all the humidity and heat, and it must have been a miserable time.
The one thing that they found out by operations in the Delta was exactly what you're talking about, trench flood and so forth. So what they did was they contacted whatever group it is in the Pentagon that we got to have something done because these guys are, you don't see their feet. They're totally diseased and everything else. So the Pentagon went ahead and they authorized X amount of dollars for a study as to what the soldier could do out in the environment. And so they went ahead and they also contracted a couple of outside firms and also a couple of universities that were, involved with these other firms. And they finally came up and they found medication to go ahead and treat the trench foot and so forth. What they also found out is that the exposure to being in the field in the wet atmosphere, no more than 48 hours if you're on a routine patrol. Okay, now if you're long range, that's entirely different. But they had things that they did that, would help your feet stay dry and so forth. So that's how they went ahead and took care of it.
Yeah, because it'd be kind of hard to do what you need to do in like rubber boots, right? So, yeah, so that is a great question.
You had the jungle boots, didn't you?
Yeah,
At
we had
that
the
time?
jungle boots. Yeah, water goes in one side, comes out the other.
Supposedly?
Yeah, yeah.
You can't use leather because that shrinks.
Yeah. And the 9th Division, they really split the division up, didn't they?
Yeah, like I said earlier, is that the majority of combat troops would be stationed at Bearcat. So if you take a look at a picture of Vietnam, and I think it was on one of those slides, that you could just see where Bearcat is and what provinces there were all the way around. That was the main area. And then anything in between would have to be covered by part of their group or part of our group. And anything west of there would have to be covered by us. So,
Did you go down to any of the tunnels?
I'm a fat guy. I don't go into tunnels.
I knew a little short guy, and that was his job, to go into
Yeah.
the tunnels.
Yeah, tunnel rat.
Yeah, that'd be scary.
I have one person that I know that's in our VA group meetings, and he was a tunnel rat for the Marines.
Yeah, no, thank you. Just even sitting in the container in the vehicle you were in, that would have been enough for me to get me out of here. But you know, when I talk to Don and I talk about the incident he had in the foxhole, and he talks about how when that replacement basically took his place up there on the hill looking for snipers, and then that's the moment the sniper took the shot. You know, minutes ago Don was up there looking for snipers. And then this young kid comes in and he gets up there when Don was getting ready to. He says, no, give me the glasses. I'll go do it. And so Don let him. He talks about how that shaped him because that person took his place. And he wanted God to explain to him why this young man who had a wife and a child took his place and what did that mean for him. Did you ever have that feeling? Did that ever affect you?
You know, after Butch got killed, for years, I accused myself.
Because
For his death.
y'all kind of flipped the coin to find out who was going to go.
Yeah, because it could have been you just as
exactly.
easily.
Yeah.
And that's, you hear about survivor's guilt.
Right,
And, you go through that because you think, how come him, not me?
right.
And I still go through. You know,
Yeah.
I'm able to cope with it a lot better. But every April 6th was the day he was killed. It just brings up all sorts of emotions.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know, and I remember one time when I went out to Arlington, I saw 3 coins on top of the headstone. Are you familiar why the coins are there? And Rick, are you familiar why the coins
So
are
tell me,
Okay. You help me out on this. A penny represents what? I forgot. And then a nickel represents something, and then a dime represents, I think you were in the same units. And then if you get to a quarter, that means that you were brothers.
Yeah, I've only seen pennies left on there for, that somebody came by to visit them. And I think you see it at Mount Olivet too.
yeah,
You'll see the coins left on the headstones also. And it's just real touching when you see that because somebody intentionally went there to that grave and
Exactly.
put that coin on that grave.
if you go up to Lawton at Fort Sill, Geronimo's grave, I mean, you could go get enough money to buy a 6-pack of beer because everybody comes and puts
Yeah.
pennies
But
in
isn't it funny that nobody will touch
No.
those? No, I mean, it's like
No,
that's sacred.
Geronimo-
You don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't take that. But that survivor's guilt is a real thing. And then not only that, but then you come home from Vietnam, and this country isn't very welcoming when you come home, right? So you come home to, because I was born in 1960, so I'm aware of what was going on, and you guys are coming home to not very welcome receptions.
Well, that's true. And I think that's probably one reason why I just went to school full time and worked full time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have to deal with those
And there was
issues.
somebody that we had on the show, I forgot who it was, and they stopped even putting on their application that they
Right.
had been in the
Oh, yeah.
military
Yeah.
because they were discriminated against.
Oh, sure.
And I would imagine that went into part of the decision your wife had too, of saying, no, I don't want you to go back, because even though you weren't here and you didn't get to personally hear it, I'm sure you guys heard about it over there, but she was here living, listening to all of that propaganda and all that craziness, and so it would color her opinion of whether or not you should stay in the military.
Yeah, and you're partially correct on that. But on the other token, too, part of the other side is that she hated the military. She did not like the. She just didn't care for the military way of life.
Yeah, it's not for, it's certainly not for everybody, is it?
No.
It's not everybody's cup of tea.
And you know, she kept on thinking, "Oh my God, if he gets transferred and we go to Germany, I won't be able to see my mother and my brother and blah blah."
Yeah.
And I said, "Jeez, who cares about my mother-in-law and my, you know, and so forth?" And I said, "You don't understand. You're traveling the world." No, I'll travel my world in Bensenville, Illinois.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, whenever you brought Butch back, was it on a military aircraft or was it a civilian aircraft?
Civilian.
Okay.
Yep.
And they do the dignified transfer at Dover,
If-
which is absolutely
Because you went to
amazing.
Dover, you went
Yeah.
up there to catch up with Butch. So,
No, I picked
You
him
caught
up.
him
I
at
picked him up
Chicago.
at O'Hare.
Yeah.
okay, you picked him up and then went up there.
Right.
They found him in O'Hare.
Well, they found the body out in California and flew him into O'Hare because that's where I was.
Yeah, I bet that was, you know, a time in your life whenever, I mean, you're having to think about that all the time. you know.
Emotional roller
When are they
coaster.
when are they gonna find Butch?
You know, I think the worst part is when you go ahead and you bring the body back through commercial ways. That's where you really got to see the animosity of people.
Oh, I'll bet. Not like today. Like today, people
Oh.
are so respectful and yeah, it's so different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Totally
And
different.
you participated in the funeral.
Right.
At, okay.
Yep. As I leaned down to kiss the mother, she had those black horn-rimmed glasses back
Uh-huh.
in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I chipped my tooth on the rim.
Oh no.
And I said, oh, blankety blank. And everyone started to laugh. It just kind of broke the mood,
Yeah.
you know. So
My mom had some of those glasses.
they're dangerous.
But then you had his dress blues,
Yeah.
and those got lost for a while.
Well, so when we got divorced, everything I had from Nam, she got rid of. I didn't have any pictures. I
Oh,
didn't
no.
have this. I didn't have that. And I said, where are the dress blues? Oh, they're gone. Well, a few years later, actually, probably about 30 years later, my son calls me up. Dad, guess what I found? What? I found the dress blues. Mom had them. I said, she did. He said, yeah, she didn't want you to have them because she wanted to hurt you because that's how much they meant to you.
Oh my. That's horrible.
So anyway, he went ahead and he gave them to me, and my wife and I were on our way out.
Your new wife.
Well, actually, wife number 3. The second one died of lupus.
Oh gosh.
So anyway, my third wife, and we've been married for over 43 years now, that we were heading out to D.C., you know, just to see D.C. and go over to Arlington. And while I was sitting on the plane, I said, I want to see if I can find Mike. So I found him, did a search and everything, and I went ahead and emailed him.
That was Butch's son,
son.
No,
correct?
no, no. Mike, the three amigos.
Okay.
Okay.
The
So.
third of the three amigos.
Right. So anyway, we went ahead and I contacted him, and when we got into Alexandria, I talked to him that night, and we spent about over an hour on the phone just talking about stuff. And I was telling him about the dress blues. He said, oh, Rosemary would love to have it. And I said, do you have her number? And he gave me the number, and I called
Was that
her.
his wife?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I gave me the number. I called her up, and she said, "Oh, I heard so much about you, and we never kept in touch, and blah blah." And I said, "Yeah, I know. It's just something that happened. However, I do have your father-in-law's dress blues that was supposed to be for Butch. Do you want them?" "Oh, I love them." I said, "Okay. Well, we're going to be down in Destin in November of that year." And so I took the dress blues down to
Wow.
her and everything. So
Completed that task.
That's so special.
it
Yeah,
was.
and you finished. You made it come full circle. How,
I did.
how
Well, that was
incredible.
good. That was good that they were found.
Yeah.
and they weren't really thrown away.
Yeah, well, but it's a shame that she would do something. I mean, you know, people don't have to be like that.
Yeah.
Well, some
You
people
know,
are.
it's really sad.
And Mike, is he still alive?
Yeah, he and I communicate. He lives in Grand Rapids. Actually, he's involved with the Kent County Honor Roll or Honor Guard. And basically, what he does is that whenever a veteran dies, he's always there with the squad to remember them and do their thing. And then,
Oh, that's cool.
and then he went ahead and he had a Jeep that was specifically designed where it's got the American flag on it, and it's got the 9th Infantry Division symbol and several other things on it. So he's always in parades and everything else with his Jeep.
Wow.
And one of the things you do now is with hospice,
Right.
and you go kind of be with veterans as they're on their final in their final days.
On their
so-
journey, on their
and that's-
journey back home.
And that's with our good friend Bethany Harrell.
Right.
So,
Yeah, Alpha Omega Hospice.
yeah.
I've been with her now for a little over 3 years.
Wow.
So, but it's, you know, it's really frustrating, but very moving at times. And the reason I say frustrating is that if anyone's listening, if you have a grandfather or an uncle, aunt, whatever, make sure they got their 214s.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
It is so important to have that one piece of paper. And a lot of people feel, oh, well, you know, he'll die, we'll put him over in the DFW cemetery. Well, no, you got to have the
Gotta have the
214.
214.
You know,
Gotta have the 214 for lots of stuff.
That's a DD 214,
Yeah.
a very important piece of
Yeah.
paper.
And you know, one of the things when I got off active duty in '86, one of the things that somebody told me was a very wise thing to tell me was because people tend to lose them so often, they said make sure that when you get where you're moving when you leave, make sure you put it on file at the county courthouse, because then there'll always be a record of it in case you lose it. So mine is on file at the county courthouse in Paris, Texas, because that's where I moved to when I got off active duty in '86. So it's really important, and I don't think it cost me anything. I just put it on file at the courthouse.
And you made a good point about getting that DD 214 for your relatives, but if you're out there listening today and you're a veteran, be sure that you have your DD 214.
Yeah, you need it for
And-
everything.
And then be sure that your family knows where it's at.
Right.
So,
Right, because it is critical to getting any kind of service, just like you found out with the PACT Act and everything. Even though you're in the system already, like every time you go to do something, for some reason, they want you to give them another copy of it. It's like, isn't this the day of electronic stuff? You have it already, but just, you appease them. But hey, I did look up the thing, so for putting the coins on, because I didn't know the meaning behind the other ones, but a penny just means that you visited. So anybody who's putting a penny on, because that's what I see mostly is the pennies on them. A nickel means you and the deceased veteran trained at boot camp together. A dime means you and the deceased veteran served together in some capacity. And a quarter is very significant because it means that you were there when the veteran died.
wow.
So you would leave a quarter.
Yep. Actually,
his
I wish I could leave more, but you know,
Yeah.
the best I can do is a quarter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, and I just want to digress a little bit about the hospice situation. I know that Bethany and I and the other people that work with her are very cognizant of how important it is for these families to have the 214. And one of the things I always ask the family when I go and meet them the first time, do you have a copy of the 214? Well, I think so. Well, you gotta find it, because
Right.
if you can't find it, then it's really a different road you have to travel. And I had a case where this gentleman, they couldn't find the 214, and it was just him and his wife. And he was basically a vegetable for the most part. And so this one person out of TVC in Fort Worth, she was so gracious. She even made up the paperwork for this woman. All she had to do was sign it, have 2 witnesses, and send it in, and then they could get a copy of the 214. But because he was sinking faster than what they thought, she said, well, I might as well not even do it. But she should have,
Right.
because of possible pension benefits she might have received or something like that. But yeah, and it's really hard for families to really understand about
How
that one
important
sheet of
it is.
paper.
Yeah, how important that is. But you know, and these guys know because, of course, I've talked about it on the show, but my father-in-law went through hospice care with Alpha Omega recently. And he passed June 15th.
Yeah, my condolences.
Yeah, and he had Parkinson's. And so we were on that journey with him for a few years. And in the last 35 days, he wanted to be in hospice care and out of pain.
Made
and
it made a difference in the whole experience for you and Dave and your family.
It did, and those folks, the folks at Alpha Omega, were so wonderful, and he was finally able to, you know, because he would always have his hands just clenched because of the pain, because he also had some other conditions, but his you know, he would just, and finally you could watch him just relax. And the nurse Mariah, she was exactly the right person that he needed, and she knew how to deal with him because he was 71, so he's very young, but he had, my husband and he have the same sense of humor, and they give people a lot of grief just to make fun and have fun. But it's really special what you guys do. So thank you for doing that, because it, you know, the thing that I learned, and we never had to have one of the volunteers come in because Charlie wasn't with us very long during his hospice care, 35 days. And my husband was almost always with him. The boys were with him a couple of times. But what the volunteers, you know, like Bethany and everybody said, you know, if you and your husband just want somebody to be here with him so he's not alone if you have to go do something, you know, we'll come in and we'll do that. So that's really special. It gives the family just a little bit of time to get their breath and to relax a little bit.
Exactly.
And maybe go run an errand or go get their hair done or their nails and not worry about what's going on with their loved one at home. So that's really awesome what you're doing, and I thank you so much for doing it.
And you know, we have to really thank Bethany for all the
Yes.
work she does with
Yes.
roll call with our veterans, Terry Alger and Tom Holder,
Tom Holder.
all the people
Yeah.
that really support our veterans.
Yeah.
But we're about out of time for today, and we've enjoyed your stories. It went by fast, didn't it?
Well, tell you what, you have 2 minutes.
We've got 2 minutes.
Okay. You put a notice out for people that volunteered for Camp SOAR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was one of the people. And I just want to read the thank you notes. Dear Mr. Bob, on behalf of myself and my 4 grandsons, daughter, and son-in-law, thank you for coming to speak to us at NAEC Aviation Camp, but mostly for your service, dedication, and honor in protecting our freedom and serving in the Vietnam War. We do appreciate your selflessness.
That's so nice.
Yeah, Camp SOAR they do every year out at the Dallas is it the Dallas
in Addison,
Aviation
I think, isn't it?
Museum? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The executive airport out there, and they invite veterans to come out and speak to the young people every year. And so we had several of our veterans speak, and Bob was
Yeah.
one. So he's got another thank you letter.
Yeah. Dear Mr. Bob, your service and selflessness have given my family the opportunity to live and stand freely today. We are blessed with you, with your time, and humbled by your stories today. Deepest respects, so and so. And then one of the boys, to Mr. Bob, thank you for your advice to be brave with respect.
Be brave with
Those
respect.
those are so, you know, cherished. I have a lot
Right.
from Wayside where the kids would
Yeah.
send us thank yous for being there.
And finally, the last one. Bob, thank you for sharing your story of your service. It was interesting, informative, and inspiring. Jose. And again.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
so if there's a
keep
veteran
those-
out there and you've got a story that a young person would benefit from hearing, look for that for next year because they do it every single summer.
But thank you so much for
Well,
being
thank
here.
you. Appreciate
know,
it.
We appreciate
Mary,
you.
thank
We
you.
appreciate your
Yeah.
service.
Oh, we love you guys so much.
And this month is roll call, the
Yes.
25th of August.
Yes, the RSVP line is open. I looked this morning, is already almost 240 people
So
already
you need to get in
RSVP'd.
there and make your reservation pretty quick.
Yep, we'll have the presentation. There are, from what I understand, there's 10 veterans that will receive the Congressional Veteran Commendation at the luncheon from Kay Granger's office. And so we'll have that, and we'll also have Dan Roberts, who is a Vietnam veteran. Who will
Alert.
be, yep, and he'll be our speaker. So it will be a longer luncheon than usual because we're going to have two little bit longer things because the presentation with Kay Granger will take a little bit longer.
And then October the 15th, we have our benefit clay shoot
Right.
at Defender Outdoors. And we're looking for a lot of teams. We need more shooters. So
Yep.
if you're out there and you'd like to shoot or want to come and shoot with us, you can rent a shotgun there. But that's October 15th. You can find that information at roll-call.org, and also sponsors. We're
Right.
looking for sponsors to help underwrite the expense to putting on a benefit. So.
Right.
And we'll
Exactly.
have a lot of raffle drawings and things like that. Larry's got his bike drive. He's already working on that. We've got some samples over here, and that's going to be December the 9th,
16th.
the 16th, okay? And hope to give away over 800 this year.
Yes.
So we have a lot of exciting things coming up. And, of course, the heat, we're going to have it for another month probably, so...
Yeah, we're ready for that to break.
Yeah.
Yeah, even good rain would be good, even for the guy in the
I
in
told
the
y'all
detail
we would
business.
be praying for rain in August and September.
That's right. You were right about that.
If you're waiting for it, it'll be probably in October.
And then also October 15th, the Pioneers Rest Cemetery, the oldest public cemetery in Fort Worth, is going to have a fall fest. And that'll be, you can go to Pioneers Rest. I don't know what I'll put their website link up. But Larry and I have been working on that too. So a lot of exciting things going on in our lives.
Yeah,
So
And the Rangers are winning.
that's good. And they're still in the hunt. It's not too
I
late.
think they're still in first place, aren't they?
I don't know.
I think
haven't-
they
I
are.
I
haven't
think
looked.
they might be.
But Bob, thank you so much for being
Sure,
here.
my
Thank you
pleasure.
for serving our country, and we just appreciate you so much. Thank you for continuing to serve because you're continuing to help people, and that's a real blessing to people. Mary, I'll see you sometime along the way. If not next week, we'll see you then. But our paths may cross again this
Yeah,
week.
we may see each other again.
Larry,
this
thank you
week.
for all you do for our community, for our county, our state, and our nation. You're a great American. And thank you all for being our guests today and watching Hometown Heroes, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.